show you a couple of very simple things. Oh, yeah, cool. Excellent. Next one. All right. So this is a meme that went viral during the time of the hurricane. I can't remember which one it was. Hurricane Harvey. There we go. And it got a lot of people very angry, right? And it is charged them with felonies. Do you agree? Black Lives Matter. Thugs block Texas rescue efforts to protest Trump and immediately regret it. Right? President Donald Trump and his wife Melania arrived in Austin, Texas on Tuesday to provide aid and support the victims of Hurricane Harvey. And you've got these ingrates blocking the health efforts, right? I mean the help efforts. A lot of people got angry about this. There's just one problem. This is a picture from 2015. That's not when Hurricane Harvey was. And this isn't even Black Lives Matter. This is an example of misinformation that is so easily believed. Right? It's important to go back to your sources. And this happens left, right, centre, up, down, whatever. I'm just going to pick one more other one that is so commonly still shared today before I hand over to the expert. So we go to the next slide. Next one. There it is. Has anybody seen this? Attention. Tomorrow morning, when you connect to Facebook, you'll be invited to payment info. It's official. It was even on the news. Facebook will begin to charge fees because of changes of profile. If you copy this on your wall, on your icon will be blue and Facebook will be free to you. Copy and paste to your wall. Have you seen this before? This and many like it are still shared. People still fall for this. Still upset and everything about it. Simple stuff to check. But this is just a very simple example of misinformation that becomes viral and gets shared by others. Slide. Intelligent into this.
Clay, it's lovely to be with you all this afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. My understanding of the format here is I provide a little bit of stimulus, a few minutes, and then I will zip it and we'll open up conversations around tables and across the room. Does that sound about right? Okay. So what I thought I'd do was just a quick little intro because the intro I will give of myself will give context to what I'm saying and that kind of thing, and then a few little bits about journalism, media, content production, social media, etc. So what Reverend Clay said is true. My first degree was in journalism. I did about 5 minutes of journalism before I was into. I worked for a whole range of different state and federal MPs, ministers, senators, opposition leaders, in government and in opposition, in Brisbane and in Canberra. I did a whole range of work in that space in public policy, communications, media management, government and governance. I kind of fell into social policy. I didn't study it at uni, but I discovered early on in my political career that I was pretty good at it. Started to do some health work for Lawrence when Mr Springborg was the leader of the opposition, and discovered that I was quite good at social policy. So I've ended up going down that path, and over the years done a lot of work in health, aged care, disability, mental health, suicide prevention, child protection, that kind of stuff. I love the complexity of social policy because wherever there's humans, there is no one system that's going to fit every human in all of those complexities. So I work in that space. I currently am bivocational in the diocese. So I need to offer ministry as a priest, sacramental ministry across the diocese in different parishes and other ministry units. Did a bit of training at the end of last year at the college on social enterprise and impact investing in communities and parishes. And my day job, as Clay said, I work for a company called the SAS Group, which is a political consulting firm. So media and communications and government relations firm. The SAS stands for, and this is important to today's conversation, stands for the last letter of the three gentlemen who started the business when they got out of federal parliament. And our logo is red, blue and green in a circle. The green is National Party, just to be really clear. You just shush. The green is National Party, but there was a Lib, a Labor and a National Party. All three of them had been cabinet ministers in previous governments in the federal parliament. All three of them had kind of prosecuted each other across the chamber. And when they finished their parliamentary careers, they all got on quite well and they set up this business. It's now nearly 17 years old. We've got about 22 people now working for the business. And I've recently become an associate director and equity partner in the firm. So we're growing. We were the first non-partisan firm in the country. There's now a few around, but back 17 years ago there wasn't. And by that I mean you got Liberal Party people active in their party, working in the business. Labor Party people active in their party, working in the business. National Party people active in their party, working in the business. Many had been advisors, MPs, cabinet ministers, chiefs of staff. The A in SAS stands for Anthony, which is Larry Anthony, whose dad was Doug Anthony. Many of you will know Doug was a former Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, and Larry remains the chairman of our business. As Clay cheekily referred to, I did join the Nats when I was 16 because I grew up in a little town where there was nothing. There was no Labor branch, and there certainly wasn't any Greens. If you're in that part of the world, you joined the Nats because we had Lawrence Springborg as our MP, or you just weren't involved in politics. So I come up through the ranks of the party. It'll be 30 years this November since I joined the party. And between that and all of my political work, that's how I've got this job with SAS Group in the life of sort of the changing face of the church, as many of you will be familiar with across the diocese. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. We jokingly refer to the fact that I'm one of the blue folk in the business now that the party's emerged. But we have a red me, is what we refer to. His name's Jonathan. He's a strong Labor guy, lovely man, smart man, engineer by trade. And people go, how do you guys work together? You're like, he's ALP and you're LNP. I said, mate, he's Presbyterian. There's a much greater challenge in this business than the fact that he's ALP. So we actually all work together extremely well. I've been there for nearly 3 years. I haven't never once had a single conflict. Not even a sort of hairy, heated debate. Debate, like discussion, yes, but we all work together really well. Our business provides policy, legislation, regulation, media, advice to all sorts of different organisations, from large, big global capital funds who want to build a renewable energy project in Queensland, through to much smaller, local, Brizzy-based not-for-profits. For example, I do a lot of work for Drug Arm as a not-for-profit here in Queensland, and another one called Safe Places, which is residential care for children. Child protection system is a big part of my work, but I'm also working on a $4 billion renewable energy project for a Danish capital fund in North Queensland, and helping those organisations work with the government. Basically, they don't know how government works, they don't know how politicians think, and it's helping them to speak politician. Does that all make sense? And we're all together in the same business, and we all go to Canberra depending upon when we need to be there, etc., etc.
The only confusing part is you said the parties are together, the LNP and the Nats. Is that
in Queensland? The parties are together.
Right. Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Technically, we are again, unless Angus decides to change his mind. So yes, that's kind of how that's the kind of context. Hopefully now you see why I didn't want to just sit here and flap my gums about myself, but you can see why that's important to this conversation and how we all work together and not have any problems. In terms of the media part of it, when I was a kid in rural Queensland, everything was the ABC. We basically only had a couple of radio stations, a couple of TV stations, and we had to buy the Toowoomba Chronicle out of the local newspaper because there was nothing digital, no content production. People were journalists, trained as journalists, trained to report the facts, subject to the Australian Press Council's Code of Conduct and the MEAA's standards for journalists. When I went through my journalism training at QUT, it was the same thing. Your job is to report the facts. I remember one of my professionals saying, no one cares what you think, they only care what you saw. Report what you saw. No one cares what you think. These days, though, that landscape has changed dramatically. We now have a situation where the more publications, predominantly digital, And you've actually got to be very discerning, which I understand is sort of Reverend Clay's point to the discussion today. Even as a journo in a Politico, if I read The Australian, I will go and read The Guardian, because somewhere in the middle is what actually happened. If I listen to the ABC, I actually normally only listen to ABC News Radio, not necessarily ABC Local or even ABC Radio National anymore, even though I used to listen to RN a lot, unless it's like the Religion and Ethics Report, funnily enough. But for news, I actually listen to ABC News Radio, because how they present it is just, this is just what happened. No one cares what you think. No one cares if you're left, right or otherwise, pink or blue or green. This is what happened, and they move on to the next story. So that landscape has changed a lot. Mobile phones have changed things a lot. You can get a lot of your content right smack bang in front of you 24/7. Thank you very much. And as a result, we're all content producers. I recently noticed that the ABC was advertising for positions, and instead of saying we need a reporter in Brisbane or a journalist in Charleville, they were advertising positions for content producers. Now, every single one of us in this room, because of mobile phones, it can be a content producer. You're not subject to the Australian Press Council's Code of Conduct. This means you can say whatever the heck you like online. It's your opinion, free speech. Problem is we read it and then we think, oh, well, someone else has posted it, so it must be true. So there's a very distinct difference between being a reporter or a broadcaster or a journalist and being a content producer. Back in the day, even when I went through, we did training in how we would be a print journalist, a radio journalist, and a television journalist. And we learnt the skills to do the basics until we got a cadetship or a job afterwards. With a head like this, it made no surprises to anyone that I went into radio and was at ABC and 4BC for a while, producing and reporting. I did a lot of work with Greg Carey and Johnny Miller, and some of you guys will remember I was their producer for both of them for a while. But that was it. That's how it worked. Now a journalist is expected to go to work and know how to do writing, so they've got to do words, and they've got to do pictures, and they've got to do videos, and they've got to do tech, and they've got to do social media. So they've got to have this multimedia approach to skill set, and if they're going to publish something online, that a 500-word story online, they've got to be ready to be able to do a 30-second grab audio for the radio story coming up on the hour for the news. But because they've got to publish online, they also needed to get a video of 60 seconds at the accident on the side of the road with the police. So they've got to have this so the pressure on them is pretty ridiculous. They're kind of expected to be an all things, and resources in newsrooms are often even tighter now than they've ever been before. So they're expected to do more with less, and they're kind of more just get the content out the door, as opposed to, is this factually correct? In terms of what that looks like for a news story, or what constitutes a news story, the stuff that Clay put up there before, screenshots and stuff, people will say that that's news, particularly the first one, the one that was supposed to be around a hurricane. But because the thing that makes that interesting is the hurricane, because there's a timeliness and a significance. So I want to list you a few things. Look at all the stories you see in any media outlet and go, is it conflict? Is it timeliness? Is it significant? Is there a proximity issue? Is there a prominence or a prominent person involved? Is there an oddity or a bizarreness to it? And is there a human interest to it? So something that might happen over here at Deception Bay and might be printed in your local newspaper, which are still owned by News Limited, the proximity of that won't be of interest necessarily to me because I live at Wynnum. That said, if something's reported on the church or faith or religion, we might both want to be interested in that regardless of where that story emanates from. So you're looking at what constitutes a story, and this is the same stuff we do with clients in our business. A client will want to put out a press release, we'll put pressure on the government, get a story in the Courier Mail. No, mate, you're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. Partly because what you want to say isn't a story, it's actually just boring. It's barely a Facebook page. But also because that's not how we do advocacy. That's not good advocacy, that's table thumping. We don't do that. We do relationships with all of them and get influenced by having trust with all of them. But that's because the thing that they're proposing wasn't actually a story. Not really, not by that measure of what constitutes news. So I guess just in wrapping up for me, straight social media is not news. if you've just switched off because I'm boring and you remember nothing else I say this afternoon, social media is not news. If you can post it yourself, anyone can post it, which means not a journalist, not an expert, not an academic, not an economist who's doing something really tricky with numbers. If I can pick up my phone and put something on Facebook, anyone can do that. And that person has no obligations to be accountable for what they post. Straight social media is not news. Those who are news, who are journalists, are subject to those codes of conduct. That stuff is news. And you can even write to the Australian Press Council and say, I just read something in the Australian. It's complete palaver. Go and kick that journo in the backside, please. The Press Council will, as long as it's legit, they have the authority to go and kick that journo in the backside and ask that newspaper to retract the story and publish an apology. They won't always do it, but they have the authority to do it, as opposed to just putting something on social media where you can put up anything you want. So I think that's what's really important about misinformation, disinformation, and drilling down even further. And I have one that I want to share, and then I will shut up. And it comes during the week. And this could be a sensitive issue of public policy, so please know I'm not trying to offend you, I'm not trying to be upsetting. This is about the comms of the issue. After the last sitting week of State Parliament, and you'll recall the member for Traeger, Mr Katter, sought to move a motion that he would be able to move a motion, so you got to seek leave to be able to speak. So 2 motions needed to happen. He needed to move a motion to speak, and if the Parliament said, yes, Mr Katter, you can speak, then he could move his motion. Yeah? He moved his motion to speak, and he lost his motion. They said, no, you're not going to speak on that, be quiet. He wanted to move his motion so that he could then go and speak on lifting the gag in State Parliament on the issue of abortion. This is why I did my caveat at the beginning. I know this is a sensitive topic, but this is about communication more than policy. The motion to speak was suppressed. He wasn't allowed to speak. Okay, that's fine. Now, what then has subsequently happened is both Katter, the Greens and Labor have run a whole series of things on social media, like the one on my phone, where one of the Labor MPs wrote, yesterday Parliament tried to lift the LNP's ban on abortion debate. The LNP reaffirmed their gag on women and their right to choose. Now, the gag is there, but the reason Mr Crisafulli put the gag there was so that the right couldn't be changed. So if you actually moved the motion and then Bob got a chance to speak, Robbie could have moved his motion, and then there could have been a debate on whether or not the gag could be removed. Not a change to abortion laws, just the gag. Mr Crisafulli put it there because his position, in blue circles is moderate, that is, it's a woman's right to choose, and he didn't want other people coming in and muckraking and upsetting everyone and hurting people, especially women who may have had that in the past or may have to have that in the future. So the whole thing was actually not about changing the policy, even though that's what that looked like. The Labor and the Greens and Katter was looking like David was squashing women's right to choose. In Queensland law right now, women already have the right to choose. That is the law. What he was doing was stopping people from using it as a political weapon, and it peeved everybody off. So it's a good example of really look at what Clay said at the beginning, look at your sources, look at what actually happened. And because most people aren't political dorks like me, they don't actually know how the Parliament works, they would read that and go, oh, bloody LNP, robbing a woman's right to choose. No, they've already got a right to choose. David just said, we're not talking about it anymore. Women have a right to choose, move on. But others wanted to stir the pot. That's what that was about. Thank you.
Great example. Thank you. Thanks, Hobbsy. That's fantastic. I love what you said about, social media is not news. 100%. There's one that I recently I've been asked about a lot, and that's the freedom of speech laws that they're proposing. I think it's so important, and I think it connects to what you were saying, that if we want to have any influence in a discussion with somebody about those proposed laws, we have to actually read the bill in its entirety. I mean, this seems like 101 basic stuff, but we do. Otherwise, we're just going to get those little social media tidbits and think, cool.
Correct. And that legislation that's going to come, or has come through with the federal parliament, I had someone pull me up who knew I was a priest and was asking me about, and this person clearly had their own biases in relation to our Muslim brothers and sisters and expressed themselves in less than kind ways. And I said, well, have you actually read the bill? And this person went, well, no, why would I do that? I said, well, if some of these laws change, I can't say stuff as an Anglican. They went, oh, well, go and read the bill. If it affects one religion, why wouldn't it affect all religions? It's one law for the whole country. So go and read the bill and see what this looks like across the board. Legislation doesn't cherry pick. It's a bit like mental illness. It doesn't discriminate. If the law says you've broken it, you've broken it. Doesn't matter what colour your collar is or what your religious tradition is. So it's really important that we actually do the work. If we're going to be a discerning consumer, especially if we want to be opinionated about it, we've got to go and do the work before we open our pie holes.
If you're going to read the manifesto, right, then you have to read The Wealth of Nations as well.
No, you do. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Sweet. All right. This is a... You should too. This is a fun one, but I don't know who would want to open the discussion here. Do we have anybody who would like to open discussion, debate, anything? Don't be afraid either. It's not... You don't have to get this perfect. None of this discussion is ever going to be perfect. Sweet. We'll just get a microphone to him. Cheers.
50 years ago, I was at Queensland Uni. I had a couple of optional subjects to finish off, and so I took Australian political science. And at the time, Joe was the Premier. He had an advisor, you might remember Alan Callaghan. And Alan just gave Joe all this advice. The one I remember, though, was Joe was asked a tricky question. Callaghan's got him to stutter and splutter for 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever it took, because they didn't have video those days, they had film. And so they'd go back to Mount Cootha with a whole lot of stuttering. And once the cameras had gone, he then told them what his answer was. So he was very cagey, and Callaghan was like that. The other thing, our lecturer at uni told us to read various newspapers, and she was saying the Sydney Morning Herald, particularly the Age in Melbourne. But they've all changed in 50 years, haven't they? I think there's a whole lot of changes.
Yeah, they've changed dramatically, and that kind of different application of technology in that might have been 50 years ago, but the application of technology principle you raise hasn't changed. You'll notice that there'll be a whole bunch of MPs. Once upon a time, they had a chief of staff, a senior media advisor, maybe an administration officer, an electorate officer that did the diary. Now they always have a digital communications advisor that works for every MP, even lower backbench MPs, because they can control their own narrative. If I go off somewhere as the MP and Clay's my digital advisor, all of my content on social media and my website is whatever he shoots, and I pay his wage. So I have complete control over whatever I put out to the world. I don't need Channel 7 or the ABC. I pay someone to shoot all my videography and my photography, write all my words for me. It's just a different version of that same sort of use of the application of the tech. Mm.
Yes, good afternoon. I can't hear every word you say, so I missed your name. I'm sorry.
Daniel.
Daniel.
That's me.
Oh, you're in the Lion's Den this afternoon.
This afternoon, yeah.
My problem is with language. Nowadays you hear words on the television and radio that my father would not have dared to say in my family. The language has become emotional, and journalists will ask people at an event, how do you feel? Who cares? It's a dreadful, dreadful situation they're reporting on, and one person's feelings probably would be 100 people's feelings, but it's not a fact.
No, correct.
Yes.
Agree.
The language has also become brutal, and words like kill. I mean, you just said earlier, putting something up somebody's bottom or bum or something.
Did I say kick up the bum? Oh, kick up the bum, yeah.
Kick up the bum.
Yeah.
You know, I gather that you're a minister of religion and a lover of Jesus.
I am.
Kicking up the bum would perhaps be inappropriate, but the whole language has become brutal. Kill doesn't just mean kill a person, it means kill the score, for example, if you're reporting on a sporting event, a war, you know, brutal language. And what it does is get down into little children's mind, and they think that that's fine to say to their 4-year-old mates at preschool, up your bum. The addition of extra letters on a word. Watching Insiders this morning after church, the word was competitiveness. What's wrong with the word competition?
No idea.
There's all these words that have evenness, submissiveness. Why? Is it just to make the what you're writing a bit longer? I don't understand it. The word is competition. And the ending a sentence with a preposition. Now, I was taught in the 1950s in Australian government schools that is a no-no. It happens all the time. The use of the language is really seems to have no rules. I lived in China for 2 years. They're excellent with grammar, but it's the grammar of the 1940s and 50s. It's interesting to see how they speak. They don't know how to speak modern American or Australian, and that's another thing. Why do we have words like gotten? It's not in my dictionary. What's wrong with become? I don't understand it, and I wish it would all go away.
Yes.
There's a oh, sorry, you're right. No, there's a couple of good ones. I can't answer every question there, but there's a few things I can probably speak to, and they're kind of a bit interconnected. One is the heightened emotionality of the language we use, and the other is using big words so that people think that they're smart because they use big words. Together, I think part of what's happened there is we have content producers, not language experts like a journalist would be, producing the content. But the other thing is that even the mainstream news media outlets rely very, very heavily on their social media profiles. So the Sydney Morning Herald, for example, will publish a story on the Sydney Morning Herald website, but then they'll put a link to the story on their Facebook page to get folk to go and click on that to go to their website. Every single news outlet does it. But to get people to click, there's so much content, we have to get people to click. And the click is where the company gets money. The number of eyeballs that read that story means that, oh, we can now advertise for this many dollars per square inch or per square centimetre on our website. So they use the language to get you to click on the link, because the emotive language kind of gets you a bit G'd up and you want to click it to go and see what's going on. So you click it and it takes you to the Sydney Morning. Now, the story on the Sydney Morning Herald may be complete palaver, or it could be absolutely wonderful reporting, but they use the emotional language on their social media to get a response out of a social media user, to get us to click and go to. The same as News Limited does a lot of absolute nonsense. Some 21-year-old online influencer has decided that she's not going to use this body tanning stuff anymore. She's now going to use this body tanning product, and News Limited will put that on as a story. That's news. And they'll put it on their Facebook page, obviously speaking to a particular audience, because clearly with this beauty, I don't need a tan, spray on tan. But there's a particular audience who will click it because they want to go and see what this famous influencer's now, what product they're using. So I agree with you, the language is unhelpful, creates more anxiety, it's not good for human well-being, creates more conflict between people than it needs to. But what it does is it gets their eyeballs up, which means it gets their advertising dollars up.
I think it's important for us. Tresemme is a fantastic tanning product too, by the way. I think it's important for us to remember as well that language is always an evolving thing and always will be an evolving thing. So there are grammatical rules which are good to stick to, but they're more grammatical traditions. So certainly if people are professionals, like actual journalists, right, then absolutely we should hold them to those standards. But this is where it becomes difficult in translation from Greek into English or Hebrew into English in biblical studies areas. Language is consistently evolving. Meanings of words are not static. So there's that sort of interplay as well. So there's that balance between correct grammar and being able to understand, and also the pomposity of this person's grammar wasn't correct, they're probably not very smart, or the new generation isn't very smart, or they're from not a very affluent area, sort of stuff. So there's those things are difficult to balance, I think, at times. Bob.
I was just thinking peroxide in the hair and banana boat. That'd work.
For him.
Yeah.
Not for me.
The question,
Please.
how do we get journalists and probably the broader media, if that exists anymore, I guess, back to reporting the facts?
We have some. We do have some.
They're hard to find.
They are. There's fewer than there are that are, if you know what I mean. Part of that is about consumer behaviour. We often, because most of Australian media landscape is a business that someone somewhere is making money out of, it then becomes about the market. So it's about consumer behaviour. I know we probably would prefer that that were not the case, that there was some independence in there, but the reality is that the vast majority of it is a business. And hence, it's about consumers. So if we stopped consuming a particular, we as a market, we as a consumers, we as a nation, if we stopped consuming a particular platform or a particular masthead, it would quickly go out of business and we would be consuming content somewhere else. Now, I agree, some of them should go, but if it's my business and I'm running it, I don't want to go out of business. So there's all these competing forces around how that works. Even the ABC may be funded by the Commonwealth Government, but even it, if you've noticed, is shifting with some of its streaming services, and it's got a little bit of, it's advertising, but it's not advertising because we're the public broadcaster. I mean, it's still bloody advertising. Stop.
Advertorials, we used to call them.
Advertorials, that's it. I think that's a big part. It's actually about we as consumers and what we consume will change, could change, where we get the journalists from. Those good journalists are still being trained Like a QUT where I went, they're still being trained in how to write good stuff. The jobs they get are not necessarily about producing good stuff. It's about getting it out the door, being first, getting the clickbait up on your publisher story, except the content producers rather than journos. In terms of our consumption, I've gotten to a point, maybe because I'm starting to get a bit grumpier as I get older, it's distinctly possible, although Cole would say I've been grumpy the whole time he's known me. If I'm doing TV news, I watch SBS. Because it's the one that actually just tells me what's going on. I don't necessarily always understand stuff. If there's stuff that's from a foreign country, I might know, of course, if it's the US or the UK, but if it's some small European country, I might not know the inner machinations of their domestic politics. But at least I can trust that what's coming at me is probably pretty factual if it's SBS TV News. If it's radio, I listen to ABC News Radio, not local or Radio National. And if I'm consuming print, I either read the Australian Financial Review, which for me is one of the best in terms of just straight up factual reporting. But if I do read one, like the Oz, I'll read The Guardian. And if I read the Courier Mail, I'll go back and read the Fin Review just to sort of wash it off. So it's, I think to answer your question, it's about us as consumers. If we keep clicking on stuff, if we keep consuming content, someone making money out of it will keep pumping that content out because they're making money out of it.
Hello. Thanks, Daniel. This is a little hypothetical, but I'm just thinking it might be relevant to our Christian faith, and you guys are proponents of that up the front there. I'm wondering what strategic value can the media develop to promote the Christian faith in a way that is for real and not too distorted. You see so much. You talk to somebody in the street, they've got so many different ideas about what God's about, what's faith about, and there's all this dysfunctional build-up. And I'm thinking, is there a smarter way of delivering this? It's probably bigger than this conversation today, but in terms of the media development, I think the diocese has got their media offices and they try and promote that, at least trying to get the message out. I'm talking about the next step up, from God's perspective, if you say. If it's one of his children on this earth in terms of developing these structural activities, what can we do to put the real message out there that's not distorted by all the BS?
I've been doing a lot of talking, so do you want to go first on that? Yeah, thanks. Cheers. It's a very, very good question, and yes, you're right. I think it is a topic for a bigger discussion, but I think one simple thing I think we can all do, whether we're professional God botherers or not, is we can be examples of Christ in the public square. One of the things I've found since I've gone bivocational, so I was at Bulimba Parish, Redlands Parish, Manly Parish, which is where I had the great cross to bear, where I had Cole as a parishioner, and now is your problem. But since then, going bivocational, I now wear a suit and tie to work every day and go in the city. But for whatever reason, everyone knows I'm Father Dan. And you know what's really interesting in that? I reckon in the 3 years I've been doing bivocational ministry, I've probably had 5 church conversations, and I have had countless God conversations. Lots and lots and lots and lots of humans want to talk to me about God, about Jesus, about faith, about spirituality, about prayer. Very, very few want to talk to me about church. Now, I'm lucky that I can get away with it because I've got the title and the collar, and in a way it's easier for me to be a witness because everyone knows who I am in this business, right? So I get that it can be easier for us sometimes than it can be for parishioners and other people of faith, but I think one thing we can do is be active in the public square. And I think the best way we can respond to the negative is by being the positive. Rather than just jumping on something, or even like a social media thing, what a load of palaver and blah, 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 and get grumpy online with someone. It's easy to be a keyboard warrior, right? It doesn't require us to be very discerning or reflective or prayerful. But if we take every opportunity we can to participate in the public square, in whatever way that looks like for each of you, maybe it's a Rotary Club, maybe it's something with junior sport, maybe it's something at our grandkids' school. For me, I get to do it in the public square. I walk into 1 William Street and I walk into State Parliament to visit, to meet with ministers and take clients in. Everyone calls me Father Dan, even when I got a suit and tie. They all know who I am. Now, I don't say that because that means it strokes my ego. I say that because it means I get to have God conversations in the hall, like literally in the halls of power. I was walking through the State Parliament this last sitting week with a minister and a client, and the Premier came out of the chamber, from the back of the chamber, walked up and said, "Oh, g'day, Father Dan," and gave me a big hug. And then the client thought that I was all that in a bag of chips because the Premier gave me a hug. I said, "Thank you, Premier. God bless you. It's good for business." But it's about being in the public square. I think that's one thing. I think what you've asked is like a big piece of work. But I think one thing we can all do is be out there talking about it and demonstrating what it means to transcend the nonsense and put on the mind of Christ, as Paul asks us to do. How we interact with people, how we interact online, how we respond to people even if they are being a bit of a goose, how we can be the hands and feet of Christ. Oh, sorry.
Oh, hi, Father Dan.
Hey.
I just really wanted to, I suppose I have a distrust of news sources, Murdoch-owned papers, things such as that. And I suppose the generation below me, I hardly speak to anyone who says that they watch the news. They'll use podcasts, they'll use Reddit, and I actually feel that they may not be news, but they're valid sources of information. You know, where you're able to might see full videos, say, of a march in Sydney. You may actually get footage that you don't see otherwise. That gives you a different perspective that you won't see in the soundbite on television. So I was just sort of, more and more I feel that I need to go to those sources. I mean, Epstein files. How do I find out about that? I'm not going to get the information I seek from news sources. It's only alternate podcasts, people who are not under the same regulations as journalists, who are able to share this information. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. That's completely fair. And I think as long as you, or any of us, as news consumers, are discerning in making the distinction between news and information, and it sounds like you are, there's a difference. It may not be news, but it still may be quality information. As long as we're discerning in how we consume that material, I haven't got a problem with that, particularly with all the stuff that's around with podcasts, YouTube, social media, etc., etc. And I think I've seen that with my own daughter. My daughter's 25, nearly 26, and see, it's the Italian blood, beautiful. She grew up with me as her old man. So she's had nothing but politics and church, the poor little chook, which is probably why she decided as soon as she could to go and live in Vietnam and travel around Asia, try and get away from Dad for a while. But she's had nothing but that. And she doesn't consume any of it. Doesn't watch the news, doesn't do any of that. It's all social media, it's all podcasts, it's all Instagram. And if she does see something, it'll be like on Instagram. For example, when the coalition under Susan Lee several months ago decided that they were no longer going to support net zero as an overall national policy, whatever you think of that policy, she saw it on Instagram and forwarded the Instagram message to me with, "Dad, what the hell is going on? This is nonsense." She didn't get it from the Courier Mail or the Australian or the ABC. She got it from someone posting it on Instagram. So you're right, a lot of them are under that age are just not consuming news, traditional news. I think you're also right that there is a distinction between news and information, and as long as we as consumers can make that distinction, we know what we're reading, we're smart about what we're consuming, I don't think it's a problem. Correct. Yeah, correct. And I go back to my point to Bob's too, that if there's a financial disincentive for a company not to run something, they won't run it. Which is why the onus is on us to be really scrutinising content.
So you're Gen X.
Am I? I don't know.
I don't know. Are you?
I'm 45. What does that make me?
Old. So, you're...
Hey, the bags under your eyes are bigger than mine,
That's
mate.
true. That's true. I don't have Italian skin. So, I'm a millennial. So I think,
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we were kind of that generation that started consuming media in ways that can be really quite unhealthy. So, for example, I'll be completely open. Love TikTok. I love Reddit. Love YouTube, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. But I'm also very aware that the people and content creators on that are not held to the same standard as actual professional reporters. And so sometimes you'll actually get information far sooner than you'll get it on the news in places like that. But we have a responsibility to be good consumers of information and news sources. So, we're all intelligent people. We need to do the work to get the right information. And it's really important. So I love all those things, but also agree with everything Daniel said about the dangers of that stuff.
So that's the age difference, right? So what if I'm 45, what's the difference between you and I?
I am 38.
Wow, life has been unkind to you, hasn't it?
Yes. I got 4 kids.
Yeah, that's your own bloody fault. But that's the difference. So if there's 7 years between you and I,
Yeah,
I don't use any of the things you just listed.
exactly. Yep.
That's how fast the material and the technology has
It's
changed.
been a big difference.
Yeah. Sorry, Paul.
Oh, and then we have Eli as well. Yep.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Thanks, Father Dan, for being here today. There's no Gen Zs here, is there? Anyone? No? Okay, good. So, recently there has been a meme going around on Facebook, and it implies that Gen Zs have a lower IQ than the generation prior to them for the first time in probably a long, long time. Now, that was actually started because Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath testified before the US Senate Committee, and he did a bunch of tests, literacy, numeracy, memory, executive function, cognitive function, and his research across the US, Denmark, Norway actually implies that they have a lower IQ. So Gen Zs have a lower IQ than what millennials do. How do you think the memes that have been going around on social media have approached that topic, and how do you think it affects the generation Gen Z?
That's a very good question. I saw that video of him testifying to the Congressional Committee. My wife is a child psychologist, so all things that relate to little people are of deep interest to her, and she saw that on social media, and because of my interest in policy and child protection and stuff, she showed me the video as well. He was referring to the fact that the thing that has brought about a lower IQ in the Gen Z is these things and other uses of technology where we actually learn better. This is a doctor, not me saying this. We actually learn better from other human beings when there's human interaction, and we learn better when we can have a conversation and learn. We learn better when there's physical things like books, rather than everything being entirely digital. That was effectively what we were referring to there. And I don't know whether that's actually true or not, because I'm not a neuroscientist or a neuropsychologist, so I won't speak to it. Seems to make sense to me, but I'm not an expert. To your point, though, around the memes, I have also seen some of those, and frankly, they're just unhelpful. Yeah. It's unhelpful. The world is a very different place for something like my son, who's nearly 15. His world is very different to the world when I was 15. I had my challenges, as I'm sure all of you did, when you're a dorky teenager and you're trying to find your way in the world. But it's even more complex, nuanced, and to the point earlier, more conflicted and grumpy and a bit mean-spirited than it was when I was 15 too. So I don't think it actually helps. And this is where there's that interface again between technology and humans, where our technology is producing content and the content is negatively impacting human well-being. I think it is a way, it certainly has a negative impact on people's mental health. Absolutely.
I think there's an inward drive too for generations to want to knock the generation underneath them. You know, we always want to, we do this better than the new generation that don't know how to do this, that or the other, you know. And nostalgia is, you know, it's a killer. You know, nostalgia is not a great thing. So we have to kind of balance that kind of stuff too, you know.
It's a good point though. It's a fair point. That was an interesting video. Yeah.
No, the mic wasn't on. He's talking about the monopoly of media outlets.
Is it on?
There we go.
It's the monopoly of news media, whether that's print or wherever, because they're all interlinked. Even the stuff that you get on social media, like you say, has got links to things all over the place. But what I feel is happening is that because of the monopoly, there is a particular political push that even these news people have. A lot of it can be the donations to a particular political party, and they each require one another's support to be out there to promote things. But I think the thing they like to promote is misinformation, personally, confusing, so that the Generation Z isn't so much low in IQ, but fed up with all the crap that goes around. They've got a lot more idea on how to protect their mental health than the older generation may have, in my opinion. And they're fed up with rubbish and they won't go into it. Now, the thing is, that monopoly, that being in one another's pockets politically, also is a political stunt used, because if you confuse the masses, make them immune to what's what, and then get lost in all the stuff, then your freedom, your rights can be easily removed. Your democracy can be taken from you. And I think we're seeing that ultimately displayed. We don't need to use the name, do we? Or the place, but you know what I'm saying. And he does that to a T. And so there is this thing where, whether we want to agree or not, they are forming people's opinions and they want to stir up their emotions so that there is clickbait, so that it looks like we have power in that area, but it's an illusion. We need to know science and facts, and politicians and the media do not like science and facts. They will create their own from sources that are not truly researched under the proper guidelines. And they publicise this like there's nothing in between. There's binary, there's dualism, there's right or left, like there's nothing in between. Like the church has gone off the rails, nobody's interested. But we'll have our own thing. And they'll promote this and make it the loudest to hush those people who have a smaller voice, but who are on the path of what's true and right. And that's the manipulativeness of social media and politics in this day and age. And we do need to research things properly.
Yeah.
It takes hard work.
It does.
And it doesn't mean we should put our head like an ostrich in the sand. Because today we wake up with democracy and freedom, tomorrow we'll wake up like what happened in Germany before we know it. And that's my main concern with social media. Politicians, they have lost their plot when it comes to responsibility. And they think we as a people know nothing, as people have an attitude toward the generations below us, which I don't. I think they're wiser than we give them credit. But they want to create this stir of confusion, because in the confusion then they can have us go against each other. While we're beating one another on the head, they're making very important decisions that we're not getting the details of.
No, I agree. There's actually a pretty intentional political strategy used by everybody. This is not an ideological thing, whereby certain individuals and parties will create chaos because it enables them to do whatever they want. To your point around the monopoly, I think you're right. There is a concentration of power in our media. And I'll give you an example, which isn't media related, but it's similar in commercial terms. Back when I was working in the Senate, this was back in the Howard government, we sought to make, this is by we I mean the Nats at the time, sought to make changes to the Trade Practices Act that would free things up for farmers and growers and producers and horticulturalists, make it easier for them to sell high quality products for a fair price, take a little bit of the power away from Woolies and Coles. And at the time, Peter Costello was the Treasurer. And I can say all this now because we're all long out of government now, long out of Parliament. And we fought really hard to make that happen. I fought alongside the senator I was working for, as well as the recently deceased Senator Boswell, to make changes to that act. In the end, it fell flat. And then I discovered why it fell flat. Because the Treasurer made sure it fell flat, because Woolies and Coles were giving a lot of money to the Liberal Party. So I can use that example now because it's a long time ago, but it was happening. And so I have lived experience of the point you're making. And the only thing I can say in response is what you've already said, which is be a discerning consumer. If someone's producing palaver, don't consume it. Just don't even go there. If I'm really honest, I don't go anywhere near the Courier Mail anymore, and I haven't done for years. The only time I go there is if I have to pitch a story for a client, because I know that the audience we want that to consume from that client are Courier Mail readers. But if I'm trying to do something for a big green steel mill, which is a client of mine, they want to build a big sort of recycling green steel mill. It's about an $800 million build. The Courier Mail readers don't care about that, but the Fin Review readers do. So I pitch that story to the Fin Review, right? But otherwise, I don't even read the Courier Mail. I've kind of, the old tabloid journalism thing is just boring and sad and shallow.
People want entertainment, right? So you could give an incredible sermon with depth, sparkling theology, incredibly, beautifully complex but understandable spiritual lessons with. But if you present that in a sort of traditional way behind a lectern, speaking in fairly monotone tones, people are going to choose the guy who's out the front dancing around, waving their hands around and sounding exciting every time, right? So naturally, I'm the guy out the front waving my hands around, dancing and stuff like that. It's just how I speak. But it's true in the media and it's true in the church. The amount of times you hear people say, oh, you know, people are getting people in by doing it this way, being more dynamic, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, it might be true, right? But what's the actual goal? What are we actually aiming for? Are we trying to be a commercial institution which is trying to sell products, a product called Christianity, an ideology that we can just give to people in a really exciting way, and it's like a transaction? Or are we truly trying to be the kingdom of God, the body of Christ in this world? So people do want entertainment, and there is pressure. I don't know what Father Dan has felt, but there is pressure on priests and any minister to be attractive and relevant and modern and get people in. So there's a real balance here between genuine depth and the actual gospel, or shiny, shiny, shiny commercialism.
Agree. And social media, and this is where I bring Reverend Clay's point back to our topic today. When I was at the Redlands Parish, for whatever reason, I can't remember why, but I started recording my sermons. This is pre-COVID, no live streaming back then, and I just use it on my phone, and I just record my sermons on my phone. And then I'd post them just to my personal Facebook page. At one point, I was getting like 3,500 views of my sermons. I posted on a Sunday arvo. This was in the Redlands, so I might do it at All Saints Redland Bay. Post the video while I'm on the ferry going over to Russell Island or Macleay Island to take one of those services. Posted on the way over. And by the time I got home, there'd been 500 people watch the sermon. And by Wednesday, there'd be 3,000 people watch the sermon. Now, that's great for my ego. I must have said something interesting. The Deputy Mayor of Redlands City Council once told me that she was hoping I'd always post them in the first half of the day, because in the second half of the day was when she cleaned her house. And she would put it on through the home system in her house, and she'd broadcast my sermons, and she'd listen to my sermons while she was cleaning her house. So, yeah, again, great for my ego. The line there, though, is, are we content producers? Or are we witnesses to Christ? Are we leaders of community? Are we pastoral carers? Are we theologians? Are we people that seek to bring people together in community? Or are we content producers? And it's a really difficult balance. Since COVID with the streaming, I haven't been running a parish for 3 years, but I was still at Miami at the time, and I'm sure it's the same for you. We do it, and it's a good thing to keep doing the streaming. I understand that. But it does start at times to feel a little informative. Or I've got to put on a good show because everyone's watching at home. And it kind of it has a potential to get a bit shallow, because then I start to feel like a content producer rather than a priest. And I don't want to be a content producer. That's not what I'm doing when I put this on.
And that's without getting into the weeds of, clergy against clergy, right? Things like, well, I've done it, I do it this style, which is just another thing. This person's too animated. This person's not animated enough. That's, of course, Father Daniel. And then, but, yeah, we're all waiting for somebody to make that mistake or whatever. We knew that because that's not the way that we've done it, So it's...
I'll watch your services and go, wait for the guitar. It'll come. It'll come. There's the guitar. There it is. Yep, he's got it out.
I only started playing on Sundays because when I first came, people were really keen on me playing a song.
I only say that because I can't play. I'm only taking the mickey out of it.
And I enjoy it now. It's good. Yeah, but you see what we're
There's
talking
a good lot of minutes between one and the other.
Minutes? What do you mean?
To finish your sermon.
That's true. Pastor Brian, Baptist pastor, but also very much received into the Anglican Church, plays keys and leads the band here on Sunday. Awesome. So, yeah, cool.
My dad's like you. He's been a National Party card-carrying man for ages.
God bless him.
Yeah. I don't always agree with him, but anyway. I'm sure your friend don't agree. Look, one of the things that hearing the questions, I reckon it's been really good discussion, multifaceted, and there's many, many more others that occur to my mind. But the thing that I would like to contribute is that I think there's a lot that we can do just as our own personal choices to make sure that we've got safeguards in place to be wise about what we listen to and what we don't listen to. And I hear what you're saying, Daniel, where if you're going to read one source that you know is slanted one way, that you at least read a balancing perspective so that you're educating yourself on what might be a range of opinion. I guess I was raised to think for myself, and whether this is a matter of pride or not, I think that one of the greatest things that we can all do is to think for ourselves. And and to make up our own opinions. So rather than let yourself be influenced by wallies and idiots in the world, is that we apply a little bit more judgment about that from ourselves. The world is full of variety and you're never going to stop that. And I think that's part of the wonder of the world, including in the Christian world, where, you know, you say your Presbyterian mate's more challenging than his political views. I think that when we're trying to present the gospel, there isn't just one way to do it. And that part of God's great economy is that he gets the message across in a variety of ways to a variety of people. But that doesn't mean that we should be people who exploit or seek to deceive or all of those sorts of things. So I would be an advocate that we have to encourage people to take personal integrity for what they're representing and for their views. So, I mean, that's me. I refuse to watch the news. Primarily, when my kids were little, it scared the living daylights out of them. And we have enough mental illness in our family to say, well, we're going to react to that. But I don't think there's anything that isn't biased, and we've got to understand that when you're hearing something, it's biased. We're biased ourselves. And so part of it trying to get to the facts is that it's just the discipline that rests within us that brings about that. And I hope I don't go around deceiving people, but when I was younger I was right, but now I just realise that there's lots of other people who are right too, and they don't necessarily agree with me. Maturity, maybe.
That's true, I agree with that. That's really good. About my mother had two sayings which I've always kept. And one was, you do you, boo, which is just me. If you don't like it, that's fine. You can walk away. And the other is, take people as they are with you. Take people as they come to you. So even as someone who's been decades in the Nats or in the Blue Team, some of my best friends are lifetime union acting Labor Party members. Because it's not about ideology, it's about friendship. It's about the time we spend together. I did the wedding for the now federal member for Griffith, Renee Coffey, who was very active in St John's Anglican Church at Bulimba. And she and I were on the board of Cannon Hill Anglican College together. We've been mates for years. I'm standing at the front of 200 people. They all knew who I was. I had my collar on and we're doing the proper Anglican service. They all knew who I was. But in the middle of it, what I decided to do was I wore a little blue T-shirt underneath my clerical shirt, and I did the service properly, as you would properly do it as an Anglican service. And Renee knew that it was sort of going to be stirring up some of her red friends. Grace was there, Shannon Fentiman was there, etc., when they were in government. And I just undid one button on my clerical shirt, and there's just a little blue coming out. And the conversations that sparked, though, were magnificent. It was genuinely really, really good conversations. It wasn't childish. It wasn't nonsense. My behaviour was childish, but that's kind of me. And there were no barriers. So the nonsense that we see in question time, which is the stuff most people see on the evening news, and they're barking at each other like 12-year-olds across the chamber, the vast majority of the time, that's not how Australian politics plays out. It's actually not. They'll go for beers together, they'll have meals together, they'll have chats in the hallway. It's actually not. When you go down there and walk around down there, which I still do now for my day job, I'll run into anyone you can imagine, including Bob. Bob's mad, but he's awesome. He'll come up and have a yarn and give me a hug. Bob Catter. That doesn't happen, right? We're sold this message that everything's super divided down there and they all hate each other and it's all very tribal. Sometimes maybe it is. But as a general rule, that's not been my experience. Because you just take them at face value, you treat people with respect, and it goes, and that's why you end up with friends. I actually helped Renee's campaign. I actually helped write Renee's maiden speech to the Parliament. So that was the first red speech I ever wrote, I might add, but I helped write a speech to the Parliament. She wanted Francis in there, so I included some Francis theology and stuff that she wanted in there because she was a CHAC graduate. So it's not as bad as it looks. And we can make that even better by witnessing, transcending.
It shows some real growth, Daniel.
Funny guy.
But,
Funny guy.
but in reality, I mean, we must be willing to actually learn from each other too, right? Like, if we stick to our ideological kind of bent and we simply cannot have any part of our kind of view adjusted and changed as well, then we're not actually really listening and getting on. So we should be able to learn from each other and adjust our views when it's necessary, you know? Yeah.
Part of my interesting journey has been, as you might aware, growing up fairly right-wing family, although the Nats aren't always that. They're more about the country and how to deal with the country.
Thank you for saying that in front of Clay. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I went to university and got involved in one form of Christian expression at university and met people who were just as adamant as my dad would have been for his party, that were members of the Labor Party. And I just saw that people could love God and have a different way of wanting society to run. You know, in fact, the power of God's kingdom is that I think when we try to reduce it to these little slivers to win an argument over someone else, we are denying the power of the kingdom of God to embrace everybody. So anyway, enough of me getting on the high horse.
Reverend Daniel, I'm just an old-fashioned girl, and about 5 years ago, my grandson came to see me with his partner, and I happened to say to him, "What's this word woke mean?" I didn't have a clue. And he burst into tears. I'm too scared to ask him ever again. I still don't know what woke means. It's got with being legal. And he burst into tears. And this word meme, I've heard it, but I don't know it. Is that a me? Is that what it means? Me and me.
I'll take meme, he can take woke. So a meme is something that you can create and post it to social media. So you might put a photo and some words, or you might put something that's creatively designed, and sometimes they're just for fun. Sometimes they're actually a bit mean-spirited and they're posted to social media. You might have seen during the campaign, the state election campaign a little while ago, someone put Stephen Miles's head on the body of a little cartoon and made him do a silly dance on like a social media post, stuff like that, which is pretty childish, but that's in short, that's what a meme is.
Woke. Great. All right. So woke isn't it? Sorry? It's really quite simple. I mean, this is what I was talking about before, about language evolving. And this one has evolved in lightning speed. So woke actually originated as a quick way of saying stay awake for Native American people. African American people when they were being oppressed. You've got to know your pop culture songs and things as well. There's a whole bunch of songs around this, but it was actually quite early on. It was 70s and things where this started coming up. So woke was a short way of African American people saying stay awake to the oppression that you are experiencing. Right? And as words evolve and as they're co-opted, woke then became far more generalised, certainly in modern society, initially about staying awake to oppression in general, but then it got co-opted to specifically an ideological bent, right? So anything that was seen as, and this word has lost all of its meaning, just like the other side has lost all of its meaning, anything to do with the left was seen as woke. And now The right, which again, these words are being used incredibly loosely, they don't mean what they initially mean, will use it as a slur against people from the left saying, oh, they're woke, so they want to ban words, they want to ban this, that and the other. So that word has evolved quick fast over that amount of time.
Well, Reverend Clay, I thank you so much, because at that time, and still is, transgender, my grandson, and that's why he burst into tears.
Yep. That's the real world consequences of weaponising a word. So woke is often used against transgender people. So woke, which will then be used with a word which is a horrendous word. I'm going to say, watch out, because I'm going to say, so they'll call libtards, which is play on retard, but for liberal people. Right? People who believe in liberal ideas and things. So this is a weaponisation of a word. But that's not to say that the left also hasn't used it in bad ways. So that word now is just not, it's lost any meaning that it originally had, and is just used by both sides to throw shade at each other.
And the language in politics is a bit like the language in church. We label things because it helps us try and organise them in our head, or organise them in our congregation or in our tradition. But the watering down of that language in some ways is helpful because they can be less hurtful, but equally then they can be weaponised, as Clay says. Yeah, it is definitely. Yeah. The other thing I would add to Clay's point there around the left-right, the thing I found really interesting, when I went back into bivocational ministry, I thought I was going to have trouble with the average secular, corporate, political human who doesn't go to church, doesn't know a minister or a priest, and I thought they might be a bit anti-me being in the room, because I have been, I don't know about you, but I have been spat on before and things like that when I've had my collar on. So there's been some pretty yucky things, and I thought, oh, how's this going to be received? And as I mentioned before, in that corporate environment, I've actually been really, really well received. I was going to do a presentation to a board of a multi-billion-dollar company, and the chairman said, I'll get Father Dan now to come forward and outline our political strategy in a city in the office. And I went, wow, okay, that's cool. I have clients now. One of my clients on Friday sent me an email with a draft policy brief that I need to take to the Minister for the Environment, and she just addressed it, hey, FD, please find a copy attached, the brief. Can we talk on Monday? And then when I answered and I rung her back, and she goes, oh, hey, Father Dan, how you doing? I wanted to just double check. So it all kind of permeates out. But the other thing that happened, both on the left and the right, and I want to make this point really, really clear, most people in the Labor Party are not left-wing nuts. And most people in the Liberal Party are not right-wing nuts. We have a right wing that's so far off the wing, Qantas doesn't even know where it is. And the left has someone so far off the wing, Qantas doesn't know where it is. But most humans actually sit in the cabin. They're just not the loud ones who say random, nasty, outrageously stupid things on social media. Including for people, because of this and me being involved in the blue team, I often get labelled as being part of the Christian right. On that kind of, the right or the centre right. And I ask people what that means. No one can really tell me what it means. I said, does that mean I'm a God person? I went, yeah, kind of am. Yep, I'm a God person. No one actually knows what it means. They just use it as a slur. They go, you're part of the Christian right. If they actually asked me and had a conversation with me about particular issues or particular policies, they'd actually realise that in the context of the blue team, I'm much more to the centre than I am to the right. I kind of belong a little bit more to the moderate side of the blue team than the conservative side of the blue team. But they never ask. They just label me as Christian right and hate on me.
Being conservative does not mean you are Christian. Being progressive does not mean you are Christian, right? And you can be either of those things and be Christian. Right? It's a really important point, I think.
Hello. So one of the things in my business, it's over 100 years this year, talks about integrity being one of the core values of our business to survive 100 years. in the context of being a priest and being noted for doing the right thing, is integrity part of that process, or at least acknowledgement that you will do the right thing?
Yeah, it is. And in my world, what it means is I have an even higher standard placed upon me often by other people, particularly given that I'm, as far as I know, and I've spoken to the relevant regulatory authorities, I'm the only ordained priest who's also a registered lobbyist in the country. So I have all of my priest code of conduct, same as he does, but I also have all of my lobbyist code of conduct of what I am and am allowed to do and not allowed to do. And together that means that the corporates and politicals and senior public servants, they all know that I'm a priest. So it's incumbent upon me, both for government relations professionals and clergy, that I actually hold myself to an even higher standard. And integrity is absolutely a part of that, but so too is authenticity. I have so many red friends because I don't pretend to be something that I'm not. They know exactly who I am, where I sit, what I believe, where we agree, where we don't agree, etc., because I just am me.
So the corollary for that is, if we are in the same camp, not ordained, but certainly as Christians protecting that integrity base, then that's certainly of a strong link to the authority of what we're saying.
110%. As is your authenticity. Yes. If you are genuine in your kindness, if you are genuine in your transcending way of seeing, putting on the mind of Christ, if you will be friends with people that other people like you might not be friends with, etc., you are being more Christ-like than you probably know.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks very much.
That's excellent, Greg.
You probably shouldn't, but you're probably going to. Yeah, there you go, Phil. Cover your ears, yeah.
Could I suggest that social media is probably the lowest form of gossip? And could I also suggest that many people on social media express their opinions, and if somebody expresses opinion that's different to it, they put them down. If you have a look at it carefully, engineered social media, which I believe comes from a lot of politics and a lot of other walks of life, leads to people being put down. And we're always taught as Christians to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. What's happened to that ideology, that we all believe in it? Am I wrong? We do all believe in it, that we should treat each other as equals and not tread on other people. And when you delve a little bit further into it, and we spoke about media before and the different media companies, it comes back to something that we've had in society since society started, and that's simply greed. Not necessarily greed for money, but greed for power, greed for money, greed for whatever. Grossly unfair to society. And the children of today, I don't think, understand the things we were brought up with in that area. I think children of today, or the younger ones of today, Gen Z, Ys, millenniums, whatever, have been put in the dark. And it's all come about because of the greed factor. Thank you.
Oh, we are a greedy generation, I tell you. Yeah. I think... Do you want to go? No, that's cool. I think, yes, I think it can be a very low form of gossip. However, in being one of those millennials, I've seen person to person, group to group, just more manipulative ways of gossip and put downs. They're just less obvious, and can be just as harmful, right? And I think, I'm guessing like yourself, just because you don't call them out when they're happening to you doesn't mean you don't see them, right? So I'm not sure it's any worse than it's ever been. I think it can probably affect more people than it ever has, because your circle breaks out.
You can broadcast.
You can broadcast it. But what I might say is that younger generations may not have as a sophisticated way, a manipulative way of putting others down, but they can be just as nasty and cutting. Yeah.
And it's easy to be a keyboard warrior, right? I reckon there's a lot of stuff out there that people would put on their Facebook or would comment on someone else's thing on Facebook, and if you stood in front of them, they'd never in a million years say it out loud. And that doesn't help. That doesn't help. I think it's also important for our kids as well. We have got, well, the 26, almost 26-year-old's different, of course, but the 14-year-old, he doesn't have anything. He's got a phone, and because his mother is a psychologist who specialises in children, there's not a trick in the book that she doesn't know. So that poor little man's phone does very, very little other than phone calls and text messages, and even then it's programmed to only do that for certain numbers. So because of all the tricks that she's learned in her profession, he can't even take a photo on his phone. He can't do anything on his phone. So I think you're right. I think there is a sense of it's okay to say this horrible stuff, but I also think that there are other ways where some parents have a responsibility. We can't protect our kids from everything. The older they get, the more likely they are to make their own choices, and as we all know as teenagers, sometimes those choices are going to be less than desirable. But I also do think it's incumbent upon us as parents to run interference and try and protect them as much as possible. For now.
By the way, Dan, as you know, Daniel's wife studied psych, and her name's Kylie. Kylie, right? My wife's name's Kylie. She also studied psych. That's something we have in common. Good stuff.
Or we both just needed to marry psychologists.
Yeah.
We did need support, yeah. The Lord knew we both needed people to look after us.
I think what you were saying before, it was Greg who brought up the integrity stuff, which absolutely is core to who we are as Christian people. And I think maybe, Daniel, I was thinking about, how they refer to you as Father Dan and stuff like that. I think the core reason for that is the way that's used is just you being honest about who you are and what your vocation is. It's not about having to have a title or demanding people use that title. People will use that title for you when they gain that respect of your integrity and your authenticity, which is really important, right? Authenticity is important. Some people can be more hyperactive and a bit like jackrabbits, right? And other people can be more calm, right? But we just need to be authentic in how we behave.
I never asked for it. When I went back into the secular world, I never asked for it. I introduced myself as Daniel. And it's just stuck. Even we've got a WhatsApp chat for our work team, just for our team, and even in the WhatsApp chat, everyone just calls me FD. Hey FD, we've got that meeting at 10, are you coming along? Yeah, I'll be there. It just kind of happens. I think there's a respect for the office of priest in God's church, if you know what I mean. But yeah, no, I don't. Even the security at 1 William Street, there's like 3 young women who are like concierges kind of thing. I don't even know how they know because I've never worn my collar in there, but somehow they know. So I go in there and I get, hey, Father Dan, how you doing? Which minister are you seeing today? It's cool. It's a witness without really doing too much at all, just turning up.
I think that will wrap up our discussion today, which is great. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Father Dan, FD, Hobbsy, all the other titles that you have for coming on. It's just a very small token of our appreciation. It's been wonderful to have you with us. We really appreciate it. And well done to everybody for the discussions you've had today. Well done.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.